People ask often about the north side of Indianapolis. So let's say they're considering Carmel or maybe Fishers or Zionsville or something like that, but maybe it's a little out of their price range, or they just don't want to limit themselves to those cities and towns only. So the question comes up, what about the north side of Indianapolis? Is there anything in the northern part of Indianapolis? And I mean, the answer is without a doubt. It's always much bigger than what people think, and usually it has more than what people think. So we're going to talk about that just a little bit in this video. Stay tuned. Hey everybody, I'm Jason Compton with the Living in Indianapolis channel. Welcome back to the channel, and welcome if it's your first time. I am, not very interestingly, in a parking lot here. There's a Nordstrom Rack right behind me, a Harry and Izzy's, a J. Crew factory, all kinds of stuff. Ethan Allen across the street. I mean, there's just a bajillion things along this particular part of what I'm looking at over here is 82nd Street. So the north side of Indianapolis is made up of a lot of different neighborhoods, of course, but the north side of Indianapolis has some major areas. So when you get pretty far to the west, really far west, close to 465 and 86th Street, that's the Traders Point area. That's the Traders Point vicinity or district. Then as you come further to the east, you get to Keystone, and where you find a tremendous amount of commercial. And then where I am now and continuing on to the east, all the way out to 465, it turns into 82nd Street over there, but it's still the same road going all the way across from east to west and west back to east across the north part of Indianapolis. It's just that 86th Street turns into 82nd because it moves to the south a little bit. So the streets are numbered in Indianapolis, and the higher the number, the further north you are. So if you get down to 38th Street or 10th Street, you know you're pretty deep into Indianapolis. And you come up to 96th Street, which is just north of where I am right now, then that's generally the northern border for the most part of Indianapolis, and you get into either Fishers or Carmel, something like that, maybe Zionsville if you're way over to the west. But as you get further to the east, that's Castleton. So you have these big areas from Traders Point, Keystone, and then all the way over into Castleton. And actually in between there, in between Traders Point and Keystone, you have Nora. So if you were to go from the very far western edge of Indianapolis all the way to the far eastern edge of Indianapolis, you're gonna pass through all these areas. And there's really not a break going through. It's very brief if you get to a point where there isn't anything commercial or a major commercial area. So is there anything around here? Oh, I mean, without a doubt. There's a ton through this particular part of Indianapolis. Just got out going back to the west from where I was, right out here in the parking lot of Keystone. This is, anyway, the Keystone Fashion Mall. So when you're talking about Keystone, this is kind of the anchor of everything that you would probably find along Keystone. Tons of shops, tons of restaurants, and you've got your higher end stores in this particular mall here. That's, you know, Saks Fifth Avenue right there behind me. I'm not shopping in there very often, but if you want something really high end, like a really high end pair of shoes, high end suit or something like that, you can probably go in there. But there's all kinds of stores weaving its way through Keystone. One of my favorites in there, Vuori, really love that place. Mostly shop online with them, but you can go into the store in there, pretty sweet. So anytime you hear that word Keystone, this is what we're really talking about. A little bit further to the west from Keystone, we get back into what I was telling you earlier, that smaller neighborhood called Nora. I love this area. So when I first moved to Indianapolis in the 90s, this is where I ended up. And I mean, it wasn't on purpose. It was pretty accidental. I didn't know anything about Indianapolis whenever I moved here, but right over there, so just here behind me, there's a Target. And I can see a big Tesla charging station over there, and a post office, United States Post Office. But that Target, that post office, they were way, way different at that point. This whole complex was super different. There's a giant Super Kroger across the street. Monon Trail is right over here. So whenever I moved to Indianapolis in the 90s, was in Nora in an apartment complex, not a fancy one at all, but I would ride my bike down here and I could drop something off at the post office back when you used the post office, but had a lot of restaurants through here too, and then I could just shoot on my bike right down the Monon Trail and actually get to Broad Ripple pretty easily. So this, as you go a little further south of it, and even Traders Point way over to the west, which I'm not gonna go to today, but Nora, Keystone, Castleton, it doesn't look very residential around here because it's not very residential right around 86th Street and 82nd Street. To get into some of the places where you have some options to live, you gotta go a little north, but you don't have too much room to the north because you get into Carmel once you get to 96th Street, or further east, you get into Fishers, and further west, you get into Zionsville. But south of here, lots of options. And you can have affordable options, you can have expensive options, you can just have a really big mix of places. And what you'll find from here as you make your way down towards Broad Ripple and Meridian Kessler is that there's just a lot of maturity, a lot of really mature trees, a lot of, there are some older homes, but it's a subjective term. So if you said homes in the 80s, built in the 80s, 70s, 60s, 50s, older, absolutely, you've got a lot of those. Not a lot of new construction down through there where homes are built inside the last 5 years or so. And of course in Nora, in addition to that Target and post office and all these other places, right behind me is one of those places that people ask about a lot. It's Whole Foods. Where are the Whole Foods? Well, you can always look on a map to see where the Whole Foods are, but this Whole Foods is pretty centrally located. So there are people that live in Carmel that can't make it up to Clay Terrace to get to that Whole Foods. They're a little further south in Carmel, they'll come to this one. Or if you live down in Indianapolis, there's only a really small handful of Whole Foods out there. So this is definitely a hot spot. This is actually not that busy right now, amazingly. The West Elm right over there, that's probably not terribly busy. So most of the people in this parking lot are probably going into Whole Foods, but it gets a lot busier than this, of course. And then the other store that people ask quite often about would be Trader Joe's. Here it is, Trader Joe's, right there behind me. This is probably the least crowded I have ever seen this, but we're just east of where I was, so following that 86th Street to the east, across the bridge, and then it turns into 82nd Street, and now I'm in Castleton. I'm east of Allisonville at this point, so getting to the point where I'm a little far east in Castleton. This is where that other Trader Joe's is. Usually this is just an explosion of cars, but it's not really, I guess, a high time for Trader Joe's at this point. I think it's 10:30 in the morning, something like that, so it probably hadn't even been open all that long, and it's just on a random Wednesday, so not the high time. But if you come here on a Saturday or a Sunday, probably after work too in the evening, then this is a spot where it gets really crowded. That other Trader Joe's, way, way west, but on the same road, 82nd Street, you follow it west, back through Keystone, back through Nora, all the way over to Traders Point, what it's called on the west side, West 86th Street. It's the only other Trader Joe's in the city. So in Keystone, if you're visiting and you want a place to stay that's pretty centrally located, even if you're exploring not only Indianapolis, but Carmel or Fishers or Zionsville or something like that, even all the way up to Westfield, you could stay here at the Ironworks Hotel. And what's cool about that is it's a super nice hotel, so it's not gonna be a cheap one or less expensive like a Drury Inn or a Hampton Inn or something like that, but right across over here, we've got a million restaurants, also right here associated with the Ironworks. Provision is insanely good. You want sushi, you have Blue right in there. You've got Rise, which is one of the best breakfast places around. Super nice breakfast place, but there's also Yolk across the street over here. Poke Brothers, Verde, Sangiovese. You've got a million places right here in this area, very, very close to Keystone Avenue and 465, so it's super easy to get around. If you just want to shoot up into Carmel, super easy to jump on Keystone and get right in there. So this is one of my favorite spots and wife's favorite spots. We've been to Provision and Blue, and then also just right over here, Daredevil Brewery. It's just a nice little spot to come to. Just so many places across the north side with Keystone, Traders Point, Nora, Castleton. It's really pretty insane. Big commercial area. So if you have questions about living closer to places like these in this video and you just don't really know where to start, so reach out any way that you know how. We'll always have your back with those questions, and we'll certainly have your back when it comes time for you to move anywhere around or in Indianapolis Metro. We'll catch you in the next one.